Hey, stuffers. If you think getting a pill bottle open is a pain, just wait until you hear about the pain it caused in the 80s. Alex here, and welcome back to Stuff with Alex. Okay, imagine this. You're chilling, scrolling through the news, and you see a headline that makes you do a double take. It's September 2025, and former President Trump, standing alongside Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is holding a press conference from the White House. The topic? Your medicine cabinet. Specifically, the little pill with the big name, Tylenol. And they're dropping a bombshell, linking its use during pregnancy to an increased risk of autism and ADHD. They urge pregnant women to, and I quote, "Don't take Tylenol," and to fight like hell not to take it. Within hours, the internet absolutely exploded. Medical professionals were furious, and global health bodies like the World Health Organization and the European Medicines Agency were scrambling to issue statements that directly contradicted the claims. They called the evidence inconsistent and reiterated that Tylenol, or paracetamol as it's called in Europe, is still the safest over-the-counter pain reliever for pregnant women when used as directed. The manufacturer, Kenvue, also pushed back hard, stating that independent, sound science clearly shows that taking acetaminophen does not cause autism. A brand, a government, and a global health organization all at war over a simple painkiller. This isn't just a health scare, it's the perfect modern conspiracy, and it's the latest chapter in the wild, bizarre, and sometimes terrifying history of Tylenol.
The current controversy is a fascinating clash of politics, public health, and corporate interests. And let me tell you, it is a messier situation than a toddler's birthday party after someone let them play in the mud. The claims themselves were specific, alleging a possible association and citing studies that reported associations between frequent or prolonged acetaminophen use during pregnancy and higher rates of neurodevelopmental disorders. This wasn't a random jab at a company. It was presented as part of a new research push into the autism epidemic led by the Trump administration. Of course, the immediate backlash was swift and powerful, a testament to how quickly information and misinformation can spread in our hyper-connected world. Major health organizations, including the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and even the CDC, publicly reaffirmed the drug's safety for pregnant women, emphasizing that the study cited by the administration showed a correlation, not a direct cause. The WHO spokesperson Tarek Yasarevich was quoted saying, "Evidence of a link remains inconsistent," and urged caution in drawing conclusions. Meanwhile, on social media platforms like X, people turned the chaos into a spectacle, flooding feeds with jokes and memes, mocking the unscientific advice. The online response was a mix of humor and outrage, with comedians like Jimmy Kimmel making jokes about taking medical advice from a glazed ham with deep vein thrombosis. This recent episode highlights a fundamental shift in how corporations face a crisis. Back in 1982, which we'll get to in a minute, the problem was a physical criminal threat, a tangible act of product tampering. Johnson & Johnson's response was a transparent, logistical solution. They recalled the product, told everyone exactly what was happening, and created new, tamper-proof packaging. It was a physical problem with a clear physical solution. But the 2025 crisis is a different beast entirely. It's a narrative, political, and legal threat. Kenvue, Tylenol's manufacturer, can't recall a politically driven narrative or a public statement from a high-profile figure. The challenge isn't fixing the product, it's fixing public perception in a world where facts are often secondary to political messaging. This is a much more complex battle to fight, and it's a perfect example of a criminal/conspiracy story that uses politics as a new kind of weapon. Stuffers, smash that like button if you're already confused by this whole mess. It's like trying to untangle a bowl of spaghetti.
Now, if you think this whole political firestorm came out of nowhere, you'd be wrong. This isn't a random claim. It's a direct offshoot of a massive legal battle that just concluded. The whole thing was playing out like a high-stakes courtroom drama, and the verdict has serious implications. The backdrop for all of this was a federal multi-district litigation, or MDL, where hundreds of families had sued the companies that make and sell Tylenol, including Johnson & Johnson, Walmart, and CVS, claiming the drug caused autism and ADHD in their children. The lawsuits allege that the companies failed to warn consumers of a known or knowable risk and instead marketed the drug as perfectly safe for pregnant women. It seemed like a slam-dunk case, with a ton of emotional testimony from grieving families. But the lawsuits hit a massive wall in August 2024, when Judge Denise L. Cote, the MDL judge, granted a summary judgment in favor of the defendants. This wasn't because the judge believed there was no association between the drug and the disorders, but because the plaintiff's scientific experts, whose job it was to prove that Tylenol actually caused autism, failed to present reliable scientific evidence of a definitive causal link. Judge Cote had previously barred the expert testimony in December 2023, and her ruling effectively ended the federal litigation. This is a crucial distinction. In the legal world, proving an association is one thing. Proving a direct cause is an entirely different ballgame. It's the difference between saying, people who own umbrellas tend to be outdoors when it rains, and owning an umbrella causes rain. The situation was made even more complicated by the case's key expert witness, Dr. Andrea Baccarelli of Harvard. Court filings revealed he had been paid at least $150,000 to serve as an expert witness for the plaintiffs. Judge Cote noted that Baccarelli had cherry-picked and misrepresented study results, which undermined the credibility of his testimony and ultimately led her to dismiss the cases. This highlights a deeper issue in our society: the erosion of trust in experts. When an expert's work is questioned in court and financial compensation is disclosed, it adds a layer of skepticism that makes it easier for political figures to cast doubt on established science. It's an opening that some, as we've seen, are willing to exploit. But the story isn't over. While the federal case was dismissed, families are now taking the fight to state courts across the U.S. This strategic legal pivot means the legal saga and the public controversy are far from finished. But if a president can't prove it and a multi-million-dollar lawsuit can't prove it, where did this whole idea come from anyway? And why does this single brand keep getting pulled into such wild controversies? Well, to understand the present, we have to travel back to the past. A very, very dark past.
It's a beautiful, crisp September morning in 1982 in the quiet suburbs of Chicago. The kind of day where the air smells like fresh-cut grass and you can almost hear the hum of suburbia waking up. 12-year-old Mary Kellerman is home from school with a cold, and her parents give her a simple over-the-counter painkiller, a Tylenol extra-strength capsule. A few minutes later, she collapses and dies. Her death is tragically attributed to a heart attack. Later that same day, across town, 27-year-old Adam Janis collapses and dies after taking a Tylenol. His family is, of course, devastated. The next day, as they gather to mourn, Adam's brother Stanley Janis and his sister-in-law Teresa Janis complain of headaches. They take Tylenol from the same bottle Adam had used. They both collapse and die within hours. 3 deaths in one family from the same medicine. That's when a public health nurse named Helen Jensen, who was investigating the deaths, noticed a chilling pattern. She examined the bottle, and something didn't seem right. An investigator, Nick Pishox, was advised to smell the contents, and he detected a faint almond-like scent. It was the telltale sign of potassium cyanide. Further analysis of the capsules revealed they contained a lethal dose, more than 10,000 times the amount needed to kill a single person. The media got a hold of the story, and the nationwide panic began. The victims, Mary Kellerman, the Janis family, Mary McFarland, Paula Prince, and Mary Reiner, had nothing in common. The poisoner was a phantom, a killer by remote control, who had no idea who their victims would be. This was a new and terrifying type of crime, a perfect crime, as some called it, because the anonymity of the victims and the weapon made it almost impossible to solve. The poison itself, cyanide, is also incredibly difficult to trace after a few hours, which added another layer to the mystery. The crime was more than just a mass murder. It was a terroristic act that shattered a fundamental social bond of trust. Before 1982, people didn't inspect their medicines. They just trusted the system and the companies behind the products they were buying. The Tylenol murders ended that trust forever. Every time you struggle to peel off that plastic wrap or break the seal on a pill bottle, you are experiencing the direct physical legacy of this crime. Drop your wildest theory in the comments. Was it a lone wolf, an employee, or something else entirely? Because believe me, the investigators had some wild ideas.
The search for the Tylenol killer was a chaotic, high-stakes manhunt. The FBI and local police were scrambling, and the pressure was immense. The investigation had 2 primary suspects, and one of them turned out to be the perfect kind of stuff with Alex character, an absolute weirdo. The first and most prominent suspect was a man named James William Lewis. His connection to the case was a chilling handwritten letter he sent to Johnson & Johnson demanding $1 million to stop the murders. Lewis was a self-proclaimed con artist with a bizarre past, and he was known to use aliases and had a history of attacking his own family. What made him so interesting to the police was his detailed drawing, a sort of blueprint of how the killer could have used a pegboard to meticulously inject cyanide into the capsules and put them back on the shelves. The guy was an extortionist, not a murderer. He was convicted and served 12 years in prison, but he was never charged with the murders themselves. The reason? Authorities could never definitively place him in Chicago at the time of the poisonings, and no definitive forensic evidence ever linked him to the bottles. He maintained his innocence until his death in 2023. Another bizarre detail is that in 2011, the FBI requested DNA samples from the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, in connection to the case. The lead went nowhere, and Kaczynski denied ever possessing potassium cyanide. The case of the Tylenol murders remains officially unsolved to this day. The lack of an arrest didn't stop a terrifying ripple effect of fear. The Tylenol murders created a national panic that spurred hundreds of copycat attacks across the country. In 1986, a woman named Stella Nickel poisoned Excedrin capsules to kill her husband for insurance money, and was the first person convicted under the new anti-tampering laws that came from the Tylenol case. The following year, in 1991, more people died from cyanide-laced Sudafed capsules. These cases demonstrate a sinister form of innovation. A single criminal act can fundamentally alter society and even inspire future criminal behavior. The Tylenol murders were not an isolated event. They were a contagion of fear that spread across the country. But while the police were chasing ghosts, the company behind Tylenol had a choice to make. And their decision not only saved their brand, but created the playbook for every corporation that has a crisis, ever. It's one of the most famous case studies in business school history. Johnson & Johnson's response to the Tylenol murders is considered the gold standard in corporate crisis management, a shining example of how a company should act in a disaster. When the crisis hit, the initial reaction from the public and the media was, understandably, to completely abandon the brand. Tylenol's market share collapsed from 35% to a stunning 8% almost overnight. The company, however, didn't flinch. Johnson & Johnson's response was swift, decisive, and based on a single principle: consumer safety above all else. They immediately halted all production and advertising of Tylenol and issued a full nationwide recall of 31 million bottles. This was an enormous undertaking that cost the company over $100 million in 1982. They could have tried to downplay the crisis, but instead they worked openly and honestly with the FBI and the FDA, distributing warnings to hospitals and the public. Their integrity paid off. The media and the public praised J&J for being honest and transparent. One article in the Washington Post said J&J had effectively demonstrated how a major business ought to handle a disaster. By putting consumer safety first and taking a massive financial hit, they earned back public trust in a way that would have been impossible with a simple PR campaign. In less than a year, the company reintroduced Tylenol with a new, groundbreaking, triple-sealed Tamper-Evident package. The brand not only survived, but regained its status as the top-selling over-the-counter analgesic in the U.S. This is a powerful lesson in the long-term value of integrity. The company's handling of the crisis didn't just save their brand, it created a blueprint for every company moving forward. Their strategy, assume responsibility, be transparent, and prioritize public safety, is now the standard operating procedure for any company in a crisis. This is a powerful and ethical legacy that stands in contrast to the modern, narrative-driven controversies we're seeing today. To keep all the different parts of this story straight, here's a quick timeline of Tylenol's most significant controversies. Drop your own gold standard business crisis in the comments, whether it's a comeback story or a company that went down in flames.
The Tylenol murders weren't just a one-off tragedy. They were a catalyst for a sweeping change in consumer protection laws. It's a powerful point. A single criminal act changed a nation's laws. In 1983, a year after the murders, Congress passed the Federal Anti-Tampering Act, signed into law by President Ronald Reagan. This law made tampering with consumer products a federal felony. Before this, there was no federal law to deal with this kind of crime. The FDA also stepped up, updating its policies in 1989 to require over-the-counter drugs to have tamper-resistant packaging, often requiring two forms of seals, like a glued carton and an inner foil seal. The era of simply twisting a cap and having a pill bottle pop open was over. This legislative response was a direct answer to the criminal threat, but it also created a new kind of game. The copycat crimes show a sinister form of criminal innovation. The perpetrators of the later Sudafed and Excedrin poisonings were in effect trying to beat the new system. The most dramatic example of this was the case of Stella Nichol. She used the new tamper-evident packaging as part of her criminal plan to kill her husband for insurance money. She was the first person to be found guilty of murder under the new law, a cold and calculated act that showed the new legislation was necessary, but not a perfect defense against a determined killer. We often think of laws as abstract concepts, but the anti-tampering laws are a direct result of a specific tragedy. Every time we struggle with a sealed bottle, we are experiencing the physical legacy of 7 people who died. It's a daily, physical reminder of a criminal act. We've looked at the what, the who, and the why, but there's one last mystery that's even stranger. It's right there on the label, and it's the most mind-bending part of this whole story. And scientists still have no idea what it is.
After all the criminal, legal, and political drama, the most profound mystery isn't about who poisoned Tylenol or who's suing over it. It's about the pill itself. And here's the mind-blowing part. Despite being around since 1878, and consumed by billions of people, scientists still don't know the precise mechanism of action for acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol. We know what it does. It reduces fever and relieves minor to moderate pain. But we don't know exactly how it does it. We've had theories. We thought it worked by inhibiting cyclooxygenase enzymes in the brain, much like NSAIDs such as ibuprofen or aspirin do. But those theories were refuted when studies showed that acetaminophen has a very weak effect on those enzymes. We've also explored whether it affects serotonin or even endocannabinoid receptors, the same ones that cannabis acts on. But those are just promising theories, not proven facts. This is what makes Tylenol so unique. It's in a drug class all its own. We know that NSAIDs like ibuprofen or naproxen work by blocking the COX enzyme at the site of inflammation. That's why they're great for things like sprains or arthritis. But Tylenol has no anti-inflammatory properties, which is a key differentiator. It's thought to work in the central nervous system, raising your body's overall pain threshold so you just feel less pain. But the details of that process are a total black box. It's an incredible paradox. We trust this drug implicitly. We have fought legal battles over its side effects and changed our nation's laws because of it. But the most fundamental question, how does it actually work, remains a mind-bending mystery. It's a humbling reminder that even in a world where we think we've figured everything out, some of the biggest questions are still right in front of us, wrapped in a foil-sealed pill bottle. To simplify the science a bit, here's a quick breakdown of the difference between Tylenol and its counterparts.
It's amazing, isn't it, how something so simple can have such a complicated history. We began this journey with a modern political controversy over a drug that we all have in our cabinets, only to discover that it's connected to a famous cold case that forever changed how we shop. And then we end the story not with a criminal or a politician, but with a scientific mystery that still baffles the greatest minds. We think we figured everything out, from the law to medicine, but this little pill shows us that some of the biggest questions are still right in front of us. It reminds me of the wisdom found in searching for truth and the need for many different perspectives to find it. It's a reminder that no single person holds all the answers, whether they're a president, a prosecutor, or a scientist. The truth is found through a collective, tireless search. We need many perspectives to solve the great mysteries, whether they're about a crime, a legal case, or even the inner workings of our own bodies. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14. For lack of guidance, a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors. Okay, thanks for watching. Peace out. Goodbye, guys.